Hello, and welcome to the Aurora Podcast, where we discuss beyond our textbook topics in order to advance and diversify our knowledge. This podcast is created by students for students.
And we would like to recognize that we are gathered at the Walk-In Museum, where they seek to stimulate curiosity about our changing cultural, natural, and historical landscapes from the youngest to the oldest of minds. Thank you for hosting this podcast.
My name is Ben Land.
And I'm Colton McCoy.
And today we are interviewing Steve Settem, who is an economics teacher at Swallowcombe High School. So, Mr. Settem, what first drew you to economics?
Well, first, thanks for having me, guys, and hopefully this will be useful and interesting for those that might watch it. I think what drew me to economics, I think the first thing that came to mind, there's both, I think, a personality sort of an upbringing kind of aspect to it, and there's also a pragmatic aspect to it. First off, I grew up poor. As I like to tell my kids in class, I grew up po, and we were so po we couldn't afford the O and the R. That's an old, I can't remember who the comedian is that said that, but and I think while most people I think are interested in money, perhaps when your family struggles financially, you might be a little more focused on money, and so I think looking back, I probably had a propensity, or a skill looking at money and the choices with that. But there's also a pragmatic aspect to it that, as a young teacher, everyone in my department seemed to have a niche, subjects within the department that they specialized in. And as a young teacher, I didn't really have that yet. I hadn't really developed those subjects that I really focused on. And the gentleman that was teaching economics, at the time it was a one-semester elective non-AP economics class, he retired. And nobody wanted to teach the class. And so I volunteered to teach the class, and eventually, when Keith Schott became the principal at Swallowcombe High School and kind of really got our AP program going, he asked if I would like to teach the year-long AP class, microeconomics and macroeconomics, and I said sure, and that kind of gave me my niche that I was looking at for within the department there. So it's an interesting subject in the sense that it's not one of the more popular AP classes to teach, and there are quite a few. I've been interested going to teachers conferences and that. There's quite a few math teachers that teach AP economics, and I think social studies teachers are a little leery of the subject because of the mathematical concepts in the class. There are formulas, there's some math involved, there's some graphing involved, but then math teachers are also a little reticent to teach the class because they're perhaps uncomfortable with the political aspects and the historical aspects, the Great Depression, what a Republican thinks about the economy versus a Democrat. So you kind of have to have a special niche there. You have to, in my case, teach and love social studies and history, but also be a little bit of a numbers and graphing geek there. So
yeah, I'm sure it's definitely an interesting combination of just math, social studies, and history even. I've taken both micro and macro. Mm-hmm. This guy hasn't taken any economic classes.
No, I would love to. It's just time for me. Yeah. What are some career opportunities that might come from economics?
Well, I think one of the great things about economics is its flexibility, that literally any career path or profession that you're going to go in is going to touch on economics. If you're an English major, a psych major, a math major, that has some tremendous opportunities, and yet they can be narrow there. If you major in economics, study economics, there's literally not a field of study career that you can go into that's not going to touch on economics in one way or another. No matter what company you work for, you're going to have to deal with the central concept in economics is scarcity, that we have relatively unlimited wants, but limited time, resources, money, skills to achieve those wants. And So any company that you go into is going to have to deal with, well, we'd like to do this, but we don't have the time to do, everything we'd like to. We don't have the resources to do that. We don't have the money to do that. What are the choices that we are going to make that would be best for the company or our family or you as an individual? And so I think that flexibility that no matter what you go into, you can use economics there. But as far as specific careers, I think there's government positions, whether it's local, state, national government, that employ economists formally to forecast the future. What are the things that we need to be ready for? Just as an example, if you live in Florida, especially recently, you should be informing the state about, well, it seems like we're getting more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. What is it that we can do as a state to be ready for this and deal with the damage when it comes in an economically viable sort of way? So government positions, I think, are a real possibility as far as a career in economics. Most companies will also employ economists. If you work for a pharmaceutical company, for instance, you have got to decide how much money are we going to put into research for this particular drug, for instance, and how much money do we think that we might be able to make? Can we make back our research and development monies if we develop this drug? So just about anything that you might go into is going to at least touch on economics. It is the number 3 college major as far as creating millionaires
Oh, wow.
there, if you're an economics major. It's among the 5 least regretted college majors when they survey seniors when they're about to graduate. Do you regret the major you chose, or do you love the major you chose? And it's in the top 5 as far as students being happy that it has prepared them for life. So yeah, there's a lot to like about economics.
So it seems really flexible. Like anybody should consider taking economics class just because of how much it'll help in the future.
And I think one of the other things, just aside from money and resource discussions, when you're thinking about the choices that society makes in a macro sense, or you and your family make in a micro sense, you are sort of forced to think logically. And so that skill set of building your ability to rationally analyze, logically analyze your choices in life, that's something that applies to just about anything that you might do in the future. So
Yeah.
we talk in class some about relationships and the scarcity and marginal costs and benefits of different relationships there as well. So even aside from the money and resources, there's some discussions there on life choices.
Yeah, and like you said, economics can be used in a wide variety of majors. And it was super beneficial for me to take economic classes and even just to learn about investing and personal decisions you can make with money and learning what it is, what investing is.
Yeah.
And how to manage your money too. I think you cover that as well.
I think that's one of those ones where it's a class where you're not going to walk out of it and think, well, when would I ever use that? You walk out of class feeling like you learned something and it's interesting, and this is something I'm going to see every day in the news or in situations in life.
Yeah, and with teaching economics, do you have a specific favorite unit or favorite topic?
That changes year to year or even week to week. The wonderful thing about teaching is if you're a lifelong learner, and you're trying to encourage people to become lifelong learners, if you are a teacher, is you're constantly learning things and seeing new examples of how that applies to life. And so I would say, let's see, favorite subject. I would say currently in micro, and I started teaching macro. Micro was perhaps a bit of a weakness for me when I first started teaching the subject, and this is probably 15, 20 years ago. As I've gotten to know more micro, and you're striving to do a better job for your students, I think one of the things that is fascinating to me now is what's called imperfect competition. And these are market structures, company structures, like monopoly. I mean, anybody listening to this, you know generally what a monopoly is. It's one company that produces a unique product. You can only buy it from that company. But that presents some problems for the public. If you can only buy it from them, what's their customer service like? Are you going to pay too high of a price? And within that, there's also other structures, oligopolies, which I just like the name. It just sort of flows off of your lips there. And that's a limited number of companies that sell similar products. Cereal companies, Kellogg's, Post, General Mills, produce probably 90% of the cereals out there. Airlines, where there's perhaps a dozen airlines that will fly you somewhere. And that presents some unique problems with competition and pricing and that sort of thing as well. So that unit, I think, is fascinating for me because that's one of the things that consumers have to come to grips with in their daily lives. How do I get the best price and the best quality, even though this might happen to be a monopoly?
Yeah, and that brings up the whole, conversation with competitive pricing. With a monopoly, I'm trying to remember everything from when I took economics.
Put you on the spot,
yeah. With a monopoly, they don't have as much of the competitive pricing, right? Because they are the only company that's supplying the product.
Yes. Now, they can't get totally out of control because if their price goes too high, then you're just going to encourage another company to come in, difficult as that is, and take advantage of those profits. Or the government's going to come in and regulate you. So, you can push the envelope as far as the price, but you don't want to be too greedy about that. And one of the questions that, as a society is, how do you regulate a monopoly? Because there are certain situations where you want a monopoly. Cable TV is, I know that's getting a little old with streaming, but cable TV has historically been one of those situations where you want to give a monopoly. Electric companies are similar as well. You want to give a monopoly because if you had 5, 6, 8 companies supplying cable or electricity to your house, the streets and sidewalks would constantly being dug up for the next competitor to come in. And so we grant certain companies monopolies, government monopolies, with the thought being, okay, you get to have a monopoly, but we're going to force you to ask permission to raise prices. We do that with Puget Sound Energy, for instance.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's just a number of aspects of that market structure that's fascinating to look at.
Do you have an example of a particularly challenging topic or unit in economics?
Well, right now, they've made a change to the AP test in the area of money, banking, and the Federal Reserve System. And that's a bit of a challenge for teachers. First off, most Americans don't have a great understanding of the Federal Reserve Bank. And that can give rise to some conspiracies that are out there. It's a unique public-private sort of combination that they are a government body, but they're not elected. And so that bothers some people when you have people that I'm not voting for, but they control our money supply, they control interest rates, and so that can be a problem. Historically, central banks for countries have controlled the money supply in what's known as a limited money supply. As that supply increases or decreases, that affects the interest that you have to pay to borrow that money. Most people that are viewing this just naturally know some economics that we know if there's less of a supply of something, you're going to have to pay a higher price. And the price you pay for money is the interest you have to pay on the loan. And so that historical look at central banks and the money supply has changed recently. That's not how the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve, runs the money supply in our country anymore. They run it under what's called an ample supply. The money supply in this country has gone up $5 or $6 trillion since 9/11. Since we're talking about that, at least we're talking about it, I don't know about listening to it on the anniversary of 9/11. So they still control interest rates, but that supply of money is just what it says, ample. There's no sort of limiting that money supply, and that's a difficult thing to teach because you're trying to get across the money supply in a limited reserves. And now, starting this year, you have to explain it under an ample reserve system. And so students are sort of like, well, were you just lying to me the first part of this unit, or what is that? And you have to talk about the different central banks have different philosophies as far as what they do with the money supply. So that's a personal challenge, and it's a challenge, I think, for students to learn those two systems currently. Well, one of the things I was going to mention, if this is perhaps being watched by students who are thinking about taking AP economics, it's a class that's offered, at least within Bellingham, the Bellingham School District, it's offered at all three high schools. And at times it's been offered in some of the county schools as well. If you're thinking about AP economics, there's AP macroeconomics, macro meaning big. That's the economics of our national economy, the country's economy. So you'll talk about unemployment, the unemployment rate, inflation, which has been a big thing in the last year or so, post-COVID. You'll talk about world trade, the international economy. So that's macroeconomics. That's the kind of thing that you tend to see on the news. If you watch the news each night and they talk about, well, unemployment's 3.8% now. It was 3.5%. And so that's macroeconomics. AP microeconomics is micro meaning small. That's the economic decisions that you, your family, companies, those choices that they have to make. And so if you're thinking about going into business, if your family owns a business, you're thinking about going into business in your future, microeconomics might be perhaps more interesting for you. But yeah, if you're thinking about taking that, you can take it at most of the high schools, or come see us over at Squalicum. You can. I've had a few students who've come across town to take the class. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd be learning from the best. I
mean, or the only.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and as I said, it's not always a popular class to teach. I'm nerdy enough to like it, but yeah, there's been a number of teachers who've taught it at other schools in the county and then not stuck with it, or moved up into administration and that. So I'm the dean of economics in the county. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm the best, but I've done it probably the longest.
Yeah,
sure. Do you have a favorite class, I guess, to take between micro and macro? Which one do you prefer teaching?
That is, people ask me that a lot. And I do try and teach them. We have an A-B schedule at Squalicum, and I do try and teach them on different days, because macro one day, micro the next. Because when I've taught them on the same day, sometimes you have the micro students walk in and you're in macro mode. There is some overlap of the classes, similar subject matter, but it really varies. It depends on what's going on in the news. It's a similar thing to U.S. history, where you might teach the class a little differently depending on the year. When we were in Iraq, the second Persian Gulf War, trying to rebuild Iraq after Saddam Hussein, I spent more time that year in U.S. history talking about Reconstruction after the Civil War, and what worked and didn't work there versus what worked and didn't work in Iraq. And so in recent years, you might spend more time talking about the Gilded Age of the 1890s. And I think it's similar with macro and micro, that depending on what we're going through, the last year or so with the post-COVID inflation, the supply chains, that, factories trying to get going again after COVID, workers coming back into the factories, and then shipping is slow, and so now the supply is low, prices are high, and so that's one cause of inflation. The war in Ukraine, another one that has made, for instance, grain shipments difficult. That has raised the price of grain as well. So current events sometimes affect how you might teach something or how much you might emphasize something. And I think that's true probably macro and micro. Sometimes when you see certain things going on with individual companies, when Microsoft has run afoul of the European Union government, where they're officially labeled as a monopoly in Europe, but not here. That is an interesting micro sort of concept there. So I would say now I'm enjoying micro. Again, my background was more in macro, and so trying to do a good job for my students. I have been spend a little more time reading micro stuff than macro stuff. So yeah, that's I think that's an interesting, from a teaching perspective as well. We talk about the social contract with John Locke, that we have an agreement with our government, that the government has a responsibility to serve its people, and the people have a responsibility to work for the government to create a decent government that'll serve everyone. And I think that's a similar thing with teaching. We talk a lot about students' responsibility to show up on time, get their work done. But we don't often talk about the teacher's responsibility in that social contract of show up on time, know your stuff, be fair, and approachable. There's nothing worse than coming into class and I want to take this class, but the teacher is not very nice or fair, or that kind of thing. So I really try to have good customer service. So
Yeah. No, I mean, hey, I've taken your class. I think you do a great job. And
thanks.
yeah, you were talking about just kind of modern events and how that influences economics and how you teach it. Something that we talk about in economics as well as just kind of the stock market. And the stock market fluctuates based on current events. I think we've seen the stock market come down quite a bit as the war of Ukraine is happening.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is just, if we're looking at the stock market, maybe for a viewer, if they're not super familiar with it, how does the stock market, function with?
Sure. There's really kind of three methods of investing for people. Most people, in the busyness of their daily lives, do what's called dollar cost averaging. They put the same amount of dollars into the market at regular intervals. Okay? I dollar cost average when the school district pulls out a certain amount of money every month. It's the same amount of money every month, and they put it into the stock market, where I've told them I have certain choices to do for my retirement. And so sometimes you put that money in and the market is up, and then the price goes down and you've lost the money. Sometimes you put it in low and it goes up. Over the course of, say, 40, 50-year working career, the stock market tends to, on average, gain 7% a year. So even if you're not really watching it, just averaging the same number of dollars, same number of days that you put it in, you'll make money. Okay. Now, if you're more hands-on, people that kind of do it as their hobby or for a living, the other two ways of investing is, one is called fundamental investing. And you're doing exactly what it says. You're looking at the fundamentals of the company, their profits, their costs, current events for a company. The CEO, was fired for harassment. That's going to affect their stock price. So you're looking at those things and seeing how that might affect the stock price. Okay, that's a lot of hard work. the hands-on but lazy man's way sometimes of looking at it is what's called technical analysis. Fundamentalist investors look at technical analysts with sort of, they curl their lip back like, you're a day trader. And technical analysts feel like all of that news about the CEO and current events, all that is factored into the price. All I need to know is the price. And they look at some statistical things with the price. For instance, I have a friend in town that takes a look at what's called the rate of change of a stock price. In other words, what's the price of the stock today versus the price of the stock, say, 12 or 14 days ago? Has it gone down or has it gone up? And if it's in the negatives, that rate of change is in the negatives, that means people are selling off this stock. And it's a little bit of a contrarian look. That's the time to buy it, when other people are dumping it. And if that rate of change, the price then versus now, is positive, then that is the time to sell the stock, because it's overbought. People are buying this, they're trying to get into it. That's your chance to get out and make a profit. And there's all kinds of other statistics that you can look at that have to do with mathematical changes in the price of things. And supposedly that gives you buy signals and sell signals. So Charles Dow, who was the founder of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, interesting guy. He felt like life, the earth, people go through cycles. We know that nature goes through fall, winter, spring, summer. We know that that females go through a monthly cycle as well. Charles Dow felt like men also have a cycle that they go through, highs and lows, similar to what is perhaps more obvious with women. When Mrs. Settem complains that I've been in a poor mood lately, I just tell her I'm in my male emotional down cycle. And so Charles Dow felt like if people go through cycles, nature goes through cycles, that's going to affect the market. It's going to affect the choices that you make in the market. So the market will create patterns. And if you can figure out those patterns or get an inkling to those patterns, that might give you a clue when to buy a stock or sell a stock. So he was the inventor of what's known as wave theory, the thought that stock prices rise in a series of 5 waves: an up wave, a down wave, a long third wave up, a fourth wave down, and a fifth wave. And then down cycles, down 1, 2, and 3. And if you can catch those waves, looking at trends, then especially if you can catch that third rising wave, you can make bank and get rich. So the trick is, can you figure them out? So
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
sure, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
I felt like I yacked a ton there, but hopefully it's useful for your viewers.
No, yeah, I mean, I'd encourage everyone to take an economics class. We just heard some of the benefits, and it covers a wide variety of topics. So,
Yeah, I certainly wish I'd taken economics now. I'm a senior in high school, so maybe I'll have to do that in college.
there we go.
Yeah.
Alrighty, see you all next week.